Tonight marks the 10th episode of the Midnight Mystery Archive, and for this milestone, we're going to do something a little different. A special two-part episode. Because some mysteries are just too dark and too twisted and too complex to fit into a single episode. And there are few cases darker or more haunting than the story of the Springfield Three. Springfield, Missouri, a quiet town of manicured lawns, family-owned diners, and familiar faces. On June 7, 1992, that quiet was shattered by silence. At 1717 East Delmar Street, a cozy, single-story home stood in darkness, but it shouldn't have. Inside were supposed to be Suzanne Streeter, 19, her best friend, Stacy McCall, 18, and Susie's mother, Sherrill Levitt, 47. There was no sign of a struggle. There was no forced entry, no scattered belongings. Just a shattered porch light, a blinking voicemail, and a terrible empty silence. 3 women in one home, and not a trace of evidence left behind. This is the Midnight Mystery Archive. I'm Kevin, and tonight, in honor of our 10th episode, we begin a special 2-part investigation, a descent into darkness. This is the story of the Springfield Three. June 6th, 1992, a night of celebration in Springfield, Missouri. For Suzanne Streeter, Susie to her friends, and Stacy McCall, it was graduation day. Caps were tossed, speeches were given, and all of life waited ahead. Suzanne Streeter was 19, energetic, outgoing, and independent. Blonde hair, a bright smile. She planned to study cosmetology. Stacy McCall was 18, quieter, thoughtful, a love of animals. She actually dreamed of a career in nursing. The two had been close friends for years. That night, they hopped from one graduation party to another, first at a friend's house, then another, finally ending at Janelle Kirby's house, a friend's place where they planned to spend the night. But plans changed. Around 2 a.m., the girls decided they'd rather sleep in Susie's comfortable bed. They called Susie's mother, Sherrill Levitt, to let her know, then left Janelle's and drove to 1717 East Delmar Street. They were last seen driving into the quiet Springfield night. Sherrill Levitt's home was a modest single-story house. It was cozy, very well kept. Sherrill, 47, was a hardworking and independent woman, a cosmetologist with a very loyal clientele. She had actually just remodeled the house herself, a sign of her strength and independence. When Susie and Stacy arrived, they were supposed to be safe. But by morning, they and Sherrill were gone. The next morning, friends and family began arriving at the house. Janelle Kirby was trying to pick up the girls for a trip to a local water park. Stacy's mother, Janice McCall, worried when her daughter didn't call. Friends who had seen them the night before also could not get in contact. They found the front door unlocked, the house quiet, and the glass on the porch light shattered on the ground. Inside, everything looked normal. The TV was still on. The girls' purses were lined up neatly in the living room. Sherrill's cigarettes were on the table, untouched. The beds they appeared slept in. But the women were gone. There wasn't a note. There was no sign of a struggle. There was nothing. Then came the voicemail. A blinking light, a message left after the women vanished. But in the chaos, one of the friends accidentally deleted it. A clue lost. And an ordinary home became a stage for an indelible, decades-long mystery. 3 women disappear from the same home with no signs of a struggle and no trace. Coming up, the search begins, theories emerge, and a town becomes a place of whispers. When friends arrived at 1717 East Delmar Street, they weren't necessarily worried. Maybe Susie and Stacy had gone for breakfast, maybe Sherrill had taken them out on an errand, but by afternoon, that hope turned to fear. At 9 a.m., Stacy's mother, Janice, called, and no answer. By 12 p.m., she drove to the house herself. Janice found the same scene that Janelle had found earlier. The door unlocked, purses lined up, the TV humming quietly, but no one was home. Her calls to the police were initially met with indifference. Teenagers often left without warning. Maybe they'd be back by nightfall. But these weren't just teenagers. These were 3 missing women. By the time police arrived, the house had been contaminated. Friends and family had walked in and out, over 20 people it was estimated, trying to help, trying to understand, and the voicemail, that blinking light, had been deleted. A simple mistake, but an absolutely terrible one. The content of that message remains unknown. Was it a wrong number, a worried friend, or something more sinister? We're never going to know. Police conducted a cursory search of the house, and like Janice and like Janelle, found the same things. No signs of forced entry, no blood, no overturned furniture, just a quiet and undisturbed home. The beds looked slept in. Cheryl's glasses were even on the nightstand. The girls' clothes from the night before were neatly folded. It was as if they had gone to bed, never woken up, and just disappeared. Then came the first clue, or perhaps the first shadow. Multiple neighbors reported seeing a green Dodge van parked in the driveway. One witness claimed to see a man standing beside it, speaking with a young woman matching Susie's description. But the van was gone by the time police arrived. No one recognized it, and by all accounts, it never returned. A green van, a mystery vehicle in the night, so many things that nobody could make sense of. Almost immediately, theories began to form. Did someone break in? Well, the door was unlocked. Did they leave willingly? Their purses, cigarettes, clothes were left behind. Was the green van a coincidence, or was it actually a clue? But a theory without evidence is just a whisper. Within days, the quiet streets of Springfield were covered with missing persons flyers. Volunteers gathered, media began covering the story, and inevitably, rumors spread. Some whispered that the women had been abducted by a stranger. Others suggested they had simply run off. But those who knew them said otherwise. Days became weeks, weeks turned into months. No ransom note, no calls, no sightings. But a few more strange details did emerge. A neighbor claimed she heard screaming at 2:30 a.m., but thought it was just young people partying. Remember, high school graduation had just occurred. Another witness claimed they saw a strange man near the house, watching from the shadows. And a psychic even claimed to have seen a vision, the women trapped in a dark room underground. But visions are not evidence. And in that quiet home on East Delmar Street, all was still. Police began questioning potential suspects. Ex-boyfriends of the girls all had alibis. A local drifter who had been seen in the neighborhood was cleared. Robert Cox, a convicted kidnapper who lived in Springfield at the time, he denied any involvement but hinted that he knew something. Cox would later claim that the women were buried somewhere nearby, but of course offered no proof. As the investigation stalled, the deleted voicemail became a ghost in the case. What did it say? Who left it? Why was it deleted? A family member tried to trace it, but it was just too late. The digital trail was gone. Remember, this was the early 90s. 3 women vanished from a quiet home, a shattered light, a missing voicemail, and a green van that came and went in the night. Coming up, theories deepen, suspects emerge, and the shadow of a hidden basement begins to darken. As the days turned to weeks, the Springfield community was gripped by fear. 3 women had vanished from a quiet home without a single clue pointing to where they had gone. And at the center of every whispered theory was one detail: the green van. Reports of the green Dodge van poured in from across Springfield. One neighbor insisted they saw a man standing next to it, talking to a young woman who might have been Susie. Another claimed to have seen it speeding away from the neighborhood early that morning. But descriptions varied. Some said it was dirty and unkept. Others insisted that it looked well maintained. A few witnesses recalled partial license plate numbers, none of which matched any registered vehicles in the area. Despite numerous tips, the van was never found. Was it real, or just a detail that grew in the fog of panic? Then came the name that would haunt the investigation for years: Robert Craig Cox. Convicted of murder in Florida, released due to lack of evidence, moved to Springfield where he worked as a mechanic, arrested for an unrelated robbery around the time the women vanished. Cox became a prime suspect, not just because of his criminal past, but because of his eerie, cryptic statements. But Cox never gave more than hints. He claimed he was with his girlfriend that night, and she confirmed his alibi. With no physical evidence tying him to the house, police could not move forward. Years later, Cox would claim, "I'll tell you this, they are buried somewhere in Springfield," but he never revealed more. In the absence of evidence, theories began to mutate and multiply. Random abduction. A passing stranger saw the girls arrive and seized the moment. Targeted attack. Someone specifically planned to abduct Susie or Sherrill, and Stacy was just collateral damage. A crime of opportunity. The broken porch lights suggested a potential ruse, someone breaking in to lure the women outside. But then, one theory took on a life of its own: the house itself. Rumors began circulating that the house at 1717 East Delmar had a hidden basement, a place where the women could have been taken, just feet away from where the search began. In Springfield's older homes, basements were not uncommon. Some were unfinished root cellars, others converted into living spaces. But when investigators asked the new owners years later, they found no evidence of any secret room. Still, some insisted that a previous owner had spoken of a trap door, one sealed during renovations. Was it just a rumor, Or did the house itself hide a terrible secret? In 2007, 15 years after the disappearance, a tip suggested that the women's bodies were buried under the Cox South Hospital parking lot, which had been under construction at the time. A private investigator used ground-penetrating radar and found 3 distinct anomalies consistent with what could be buried remains. But the city refused to excavate. Officials claimed it would just simply be too costly and disruptive. Did bureaucracy bury the truth, or was it just another dead end? As the investigation dragged on, Sherrill Levitt's family continued to live with uncertainty. Susie and Stacy's friends aged, moved on, but never stopped hoping for answers. And each year, on June 7th, the community would gather to remember the women who vanished without a trace. In a town as quiet as Springfield, secrets aren't supposed to last. But this one seems to have slipped into the shadows. A shattered light, a missed message, and 3 women gone without a trace. Coming up, the aftermath. How the investigation grew colder and colder while the families remained caught in an endless cycle of hope and grief. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. And the 3 women who vanished from 1717 East Delmar Street seemed to fade like shadows. But for the families, there was no fading, only an emptiness, and a refusal to let that emptiness be the final word. Janice McCall, Stacy's mother, became the face of the search, handing out flyers, speaking to the press, refusing to accept the silence. If anyone knows where they are, please come forward. We just want them home. She would drive to Springfield police headquarters almost daily, pushing for updates, asking questions, and demanding progress. Sherrill Levitt's family remained quieter and more reserved, but no less devastated. They never sold the house, never packed away her things. Springfield was just no longer the same. Porch lights became a sign of fear, always left on just in case. Young women were warned not to travel alone. Doors were double locked, windows checked twice. And the green van, that phantom of the night, became an urban legend. Every strange vehicle, every unfamiliar face, suspicion grew and grew and grew. As the investigation dragged on, whispers turned to arguments. Some insisted it had to have been a random abduction. Others believed someone in the women's circle knew more than they were saying. And the theory of a hidden basement grew like a curse, an unsolved riddle within an unsolved crime. The police, to their credit, chased down every tip. Reports of the women seen in Florida. False. A psychic claiming they were buried near a riverbank. Nothing. A convicted felon who claimed they were buried under a parking garage. Refused to be searched by city officials. Each theory and tip led to hope, yet each would end in despair. In time, the media descended. Reporters spoke of the Springfield Three, a catchy, haunting title for a dark, unsolved mystery. 3 women would vanish without a trace, with no suspects, no clues, no sign of a crime, and no answers. True crime shows produced specials, amateur sleuths debated theories online. But for those who knew them, it was more than a story. Every few years, a new tip would ignite hope. In 1997, a man claimed to have seen Stacy and Susie in Texas, working at a restaurant. Police investigated, turned out to be nothing. In 2007, the concrete parking lot theory reemerged, but the city refused to dig. And in 2012, Robert Craig Cox, the ultimate troll, the convicted felon who hinted he knew the truth, gave another interview, again claiming the women were dead, but offering no proof. He simply wouldn't go away. For Janice McCall, each false lead was a fresh wound. Every June 7th, the families and the community would hold that vigil. 3 candles for the 3 missing women. Their faces on fading posters, their names whispered in prayers. But as the years passed, even the town's sense of tragedy began to dull. New faces, new stories, a new generation who had never even heard of the Springfield Three. But for the families, the grief never aged. For Janice McCall, hope is all a double-edged sword. She still believes Stacy is alive. She still answers every phone call. She still watches for a familiar face in crowded places. If you're out there, Stacy, we love you. We never stopped looking. But hope in the face of silence is a heavy thing to carry. 3 women vanished from a home on a quiet night in Springfield. Their home was undisturbed. There were no signs of a struggle, no bodies. Just a town that was left haunted and 2 families still waiting for an answer. But this is only the beginning. Coming up in part 2, the theories deepen, suspects emerge, and the search for the Springfield Three becomes a desperate descent into darkness. You've been listening to the Midnight Mystery Archive. Every week, 2 stories, 2 episodes, 2 enduring mysteries. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Like, follow, and share. Until next time.